Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm Keri Warnick with Multi-Region Purchasing Co-op out of Region 10 Education Service Center, and welcome to what I'm calling the Food Service View. I've got a great panel today to talk about all kinds of things going on, not only just generally in the industry due to COVID, but also with their specific companies. And before I get started, for the attendees, I just wanted to remind you, you are in listen-only mode. So you've got two options. At the bottom of your screen, you've got a link for a Q&A panel. If you have a question for one of the panelists or just to the group where anyone could answer, please use the Q&A panel to ask those questions. Elizabeth Gonzalez, my commodity specialist, will be managing the Q&A panel only. You've also got the option for a chat panel. Both of those are open. The chat panel is more if you just some general conversation, which I know goes on during these webinars and meetings. And questions should really be to the Q&A panel if you want a panelist to answer. We will try to get to all the questions asked during this session, and I am trying to keep this at about an hour to an hour 15. And any questions we feel need to be answered after the session, we will do so in email. So let's go ahead and get started. So I want to go ahead and introduce the panel so that everyone knows who is who or whom. So starting off, we've got Dan Grout with Tools for Schools. Hi, Dan. I've got Gilbert Marquez with Nardone Bros.
Good morning.
Good morning. Got Lisa Durkin with Integrated Foodservice.
Good morning.
Good morning, Lisa. And I've got Mike Likovich with Buena Vista Foods.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning, Mike. I've got Chuck Ainsworth with SFS Portion Pack. That's a mouthful, Chuck. Good morning. Tongue twister. I have Kip Guthrie with Tasty Brands.
Hey, how are y'all?
And then I've got Rick Leach with Bakecrafters.
Good morning.
Good morning. Then I've got Joey Cross with Kellogg's.
Hello, good morning.
And then I've got Michelle Gerber with Dart.
Good morning, everyone.
Rick Badsgard with Dart.
Good morning.
And then Julie Coleman with Dart.
Good morning.
All right. I don't think I missed anyone. If I did, please let me know. Got my list going here. All right. So the way this is going to work today is I've got about 6 to 7 just general topic questions I'm asking the panelist group, and I will call on each one randomly, but any of you are welcome to chime in if you would like to address the general topic question. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm just going to start with Gilbert. He's, I don't know how your screen is laid out, but he's in my top left. So Gilbert, describe some of the changes your company implemented upon school closures due to the coronavirus.
Sure, thanks, Keri. The main changes that we made were with regards to the health and safety of our workers. We made sure that we implement.
Gilbert, all of a sudden you're muted. We lost you.
Sorry about that. I was holding the space bar down, and then when I switched screens, it just started giving me a lot of spaces. But we implemented changes with the health and safety of our workers in mind. By cleaning and disinfecting, we implemented daily health checks, including temperature checks for our employees. They're wearing cloth face coverings to make sure they're safe. That's the biggest change we made. We didn't see a big impact on how we actually run our production lines, other than making sure our people are taken care of.
Okay, great. All right. So Kip Guthrie with Tasty Brands, you want to chime in on that question?
Yeah, I mean, keeping it pretty simple, like what Gibbs said, we all kind of know what the strategy is for trying to be safe, and I think we did everything we could. If there is an employee at the plant that feels any sort of symptoms of being sick, then we allow them to take 14 days paid vacation without any questions at all. And you know, with all of the normal safety protocols and everything like that, knock on wood, but we have not had a single any sort of outbreak or anything at any of our plants. So we think that we're in a good position, and we've made all the right decisions to do this safely going into the school year.
Nice. And I also would like to hear from Chuck Ainsworth with Portion Pack, because your company is sort of in the schools, inventory control, restocking. I'm sure that your company went through a lot of changes due to the closure.
Well,
but what
we went, Keri, thanks for asking. We did in fact make some changes, but one of the things you have to keep in mind is that we've been doing food safety and sanitation programs for over 30 years in school nutrition. And one of the things that we've always done is had SEs that we focused on during cold and flu season. When we were at LAC is basically right after that when the country shut down in March. So we spent that week putting together SOPs for service people and for our customers that were COVID specific. So the following week, we were actually servicing schools, and we made sure that all of our service representatives were following proper protocols with PPE. We had COVID specific SOPs for our customers to do non-congregate feeding, grab and go feeding, those types of things.
Gotcha. Great. Does anyone else want to share some of the changes they implemented into their company? As they're probably feeling like you did the similar and same things, right? I know. I don't want to be redundant there, but I'd like to give everyone a chance to share. So I'm going to go ahead and call on Lisa Durkin. So how has production been impacted due to the coronavirus for integrated foods?
Well, depends on the product line. There's been a lot of impact. Obviously, bulk production has kind of ramped down, and we've geared up our individually wrapped items. The more popular IW items obviously have been increased. We have had to temporarily halt some production of some of the codes that weren't as popular to allow us to increase our efficiencies on some of the items that we see are being more orders that have been coming in for. We have had to limit some codes just again to allow us to build up those inventories. Like grilled cheese we've got 11 codes, so we've kind of scaled that back down to ensure everybody can get a finished product. Some of the items, depending on where they're being made, we've had to move into different production rooms just to try to keep production going. And so some of those rooms may not have the capability to have some of like the graphic wraps that we have. So if we move them into another room, we have to run them on clear. So there's just like little things like that might pop up every now and then.
Well, and you are not alone in that. We have heard from so many companies that are doing the same thing. You're starting to kind of downsize the number of SKUs and really stick with the tried and true, the most popular products, because that's how you can more quickly create the product and meet the demand. So you're definitely not alone in that. Thank you. All right, so let me go ahead and call on Joey with Kellogg's. Kellogg's, a lot of already individually portion packed products. So how was production impacted with all of this for Kellogg's?
Well, right when COVID hit, products just started flying off the shelf, and specifically pre-built kits like Jumpstart meal kits, breakfast kits that have a juice in them and the grains for breakfast were out of stock, and they have been out of stock for a couple of months now. Fortunately, all the stock has been replenished on those meal kits, but even other items like Pop-Tarts flying off the shelf, cereal bars flying off the shelf, cereal obviously flying off the shelf. So production levels were impacted significantly. The good news is those items have ramped up production, like you just mentioned, SKU prioritization and figuring out which SKUs we could slow production on so we could speed up production on high moving popular SKUs has resulted for the good.
So I do have a question about that. All of you have a footprint in retail, but Kellogg's has been a household name for years and years. did you find that the retail side, the demand when shelves started getting completely emptied, did that affect the K-12 side? Because I'm hearing various reports from manufacturers about the impact of demand on the retail side really affecting production with K-12.
That's a good question, and really it has not affected. It's a separate business unit, and the production lines specifically are different. What's going into retail is mostly not whole grain, but what's going into food service and schools primarily is all whole grain SKUs. So for that reason, it does require a different production line on most, not all, but on most SKUs.
Right. Well, that is very true. Thank you, Joey. Okay, I'd like to call on any one of the reps from Darts. How was your production impacted with all of this? Any one of you can jump in. Julie, you want to jump in?
Yeah, as you can imagine, we did see large spikes in some of our foam hinge tray line. Grabbing, to-go orders, delivery, curbside, things like that was all impacted. So we did ramp up production for that. But the other thing that we've been doing is we've been developing customized packaging plans with our customers, working collaboratively to try to, if we're having a foam hinge tray, you can't get that, maybe you could switch to an alternative item. We certainly have a lot of packaging items available. And so we are working together collaboratively to try to match needs with the packaging that's available.
Okay, great. And Mike from Buena Vista, I see you raising your hand. Go ahead. And don't forget to mute your mics if you're a panelist and not speaking.
Thanks, Keri. Similar to everyone else, we did go through a SKU rationalization just to focus on our most popular items. And, it wasn't as much as having inventory. It was, how quick can we get these lead times? Because, at the start of this, everyone was going back and forth, not sure what they needed. So, when the decision was made, the company that could get it out the door the quickest was normally the winner that way. So, we standard have, about 21 days lead time. We were able to bring that down. We're getting orders out within 72 hours now because we were able to do that SKU rationalization and because we had customers who were willing to work with us. Another portion of that is, this may be a question later on, but, the supply chain, just getting the ingredients, things like that. So, we really did, I think, a good job in kind of hedging our bets. We actually have 27 tractor trailers sitting in our parking lot right now because, as it's all come to fruition, you go in there to put a PO for a certain ingredient, a certain component, 2 days later, it's gone and, you're kind of SOL. So, we found that hedging our bets on that one was a real important one because, it is one of those where the shortest lead time really benefits the customer there.
Right. And, I'm glad you said that because it's one of the questions that pops up from some of my food service directors is that it's something I do want to ask to the group because it's so important that, we understand, okay, my district is going to order the food through our mainline distributor, the batch. They're going to place a purchase order with any one of you, depending on what the products are. And then, they get a truckload in, but maybe they don't know what's going to be shorted. And maybe that's because you didn't get some of the raw materials or whatever is happening. And that has been one of the common questions popping up is if it was forecasted with the distributor, they've placed the order and they don't even know if they're going to get shorted. What causes that to happen? And I think you touched on a little bit of it just right there as you talked about that. But I would love for anyone in the group to, I know this is what was not one of my initial questions, but it's a burning question out there. So if anyone wants to chime in, and I know I have not called on, Rick yet with Dart or a couple of you, but we're getting to that. So if anyone would like to chime in on that, feel free. Of what might cause. Yes, go ahead, Rick Leach with Bakecrafters, please.
Right. We experienced that initially also. 2 years ago, we built a new sandwich facility in addition to our bakeries. And when this happened, we started getting inundated because we had the thaw and serve type sandwiches, the turkey ham and cheese and the turkey breast and cheese on the hoagies. And all of a sudden, our suppliers were not able to keep up with our demand and to keep the function going. So what we did is we've cross-trained and we've got at least 2 suppliers for each ingredient so that if one is falling behind, the other can pick up the slack and we can continue going to our spec. And by doing that, now, of course, we've been able to add a new West Coast sandwich plant, an East Coast sandwich plant, and we have 2 in Pennsylvania. And we're ready to go on anything anyone wants, because we did limit the amount of sandwiches we offered in order to run more production time and get more out. Now we've brought all of them back again, and like I said, Bakecrafters is ready to go in the sandwich business. IW.
Perfect. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next question, which kind of is a segue off of this IW comment. I'm going to start with Dan Grout with Tools for Schools. We haven't heard from Dan yet.
Morning, Keri.
So Dan, the question is, does your company have the ability to individually wrap products? Some of your products, all of your products? And if so, how does that affect production levels?
Oh, thank you, Keri. Appreciate you putting all this together this morning as well. So what we had a number of SKUs that were either IW or bulk. We didn't have a whole lot of crossover SKUs that were available both IW or bulk. One thing that we've had to look at this year since COVID is how can we quickly change? And the challenge is a lot of times those production lines are set up to either be IW or bulk. And so it's not as simple as saying, hey, we're just going to move it from line A to line B so we can put it in a bag. Or maybe line A doesn't have a wrapper attached to it. So how are we going to be able to run part of it bulk and then part of it wrapped without disrupting the supply? So we have a number of items now that we've started looking at that were available bulk that we're moving to IW. Obviously, the items that were IW have been very successful this time. And then we have a few items that we don't have the right equipment to be able to wrap it. It's not, say it's a piece count. And so it's a different machine than, as products going down the line and being over wrapped, say in the case of our apple cinnamon Texas toast. But then you move into, say, a mini calzone that 3 pieces is a serving. You have to be able to put those 3 pieces in a bag, and that machinery is a little bit unique to production. So we've looked at everything and what can we easily wrap? What do we have to make an investment in to be able to wrap? What is the demand going to be there for? And so there's a lot of decisions that are going into it, or a lot of variables that are going into making that decision.
Right. That makes complete sense. Yeah. All right. So Gilbert with Nardone Brothers, do you want to answer to that question as well?
Yes. Thank you, Keri. Before all this even happened, we had many of our items individually wrapped in ovenable wrap or boxed as well. What we did, we added a couple of our more popular items. We weren't wrapping them before, they were just a bulk item, but we added those in to have them individually wrapped. Also, in anticipation of increased demand for individually wrapped items, we're going to be increasing our production capacity by 50% here in the near future. So we haven't had a problem keeping up so far, but we know that there's going to be a bigger demand, so we're going to be ready for it. We don't anticipate any changes in our lead times or any shortages. So far, everything's gone really smooth for us. We know that that's not always been the case, but we've been fortunate in that area. So we're happy to say that we're ready to go.
Okay, great. And I know, Vinny, I see you down there. I don't see your face, but I do see you on the call, so I will try to call on you next time.
No, it's fine. I'm in the office right now, so I'm all messed up and stuff like that. So
okay, no worries, no worries. I'm gonna go ahead and call on Lisa Durkin as well, because I know Integrated does a lot of bulk foods, and just curious, how this is going to impact Integrated Foods.
A lot of our products are individually wrapped. It seems to be more of our bulk beef. It's the beef items that are more of the bulk. We do have some where we've added value by putting like a hamburger on a bun and wrapping it. But it does, like you said, it does impact some of the bulk. You may have to have more people on hand if we try to switch from bulk to wrap. And more hands, or less hands, I should say, actually less hands on deck, because you're trying to do the social distancing, putting guards in place. And I think this actually comes into your next question about some of the struggles that you have. It does slow down your production, and you don't get the yields because you don't have as many hands on deck working. So.
Exactly. And we've heard, I've heard from so many manufacturers that, alarming numbers in my mind, because they're saying that their production levels have been dropped by 75% when they switch over to individually wrapping one of their products that is typically not an IW. And I think, that is what prompted me to start this conversation. I'll call it here in a minute, Kip, because I think so many districts think they're going to get those products. And when I hear that number, I'm thinking, well, if 100 of my districts order the IW, 25 of them are going to get it. The rest are going to get bulk. And we've got to figure out ways to work with that. Kip, with Tasty Brands, you raised your hand. Go ahead.
So, I can say the same exact things that Dan, Gibb, and Lisa were saying, very, very similar things. I just wanted to add another comment just to kind of help put things in perspective a little bit. So our company, Tasty Brands, normally I'd say we sell about 90% bulk food and 10% IW. And in mid-March, that switched to 90% IW and 10% bulk. Now, our bulk food is made at different plants than our IW food. So when demand changes from 90% bulk to 90% IW, it's not like we can just shift all those people over to start working on IW. It doesn't work like that. So, I think ideally, we'd love for districts to really think about ways on how to transition back to using more bulk food, and definitely how to do it in a safe way. That's more important than anything. But I'm not sure if the IW, if every district switches to IW, I'm not sure if us manufacturers are going to be able to keep up with that.
I would agree, and that's why I'm holding, and that's, just the importance of having a packaging company on the panel today, because they're the ones that, are going to have to answer to that need of dealing with the bulk foods and providing the right containers. So I know I'm going to get to Dart here in a minute on this question, but Dan, you raised your hand with tools for schools. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah. So kind of working off what Kip said too, we're constantly reaching out asking for projections and let us know what we want, because the last thing, even those of us that have IW product, the IW product is going to be more expensive just because of the manufacturing impact, obviously the cost of the wrapper. There are a lot of elements that go into that. But the last thing we want to do as manufacturers is be sitting on product that is more expensive that nobody wants. And at the same time, we want to make sure we have it if you do want it. And so when we're constantly reaching out, asking for projections, or our brokers are contacting saying, what do you think you're going to use this year? We're just trying to be better prepared for what the school districts are going to look like. And I realize there's a lot of questions right now. Just as you referenced at 3:00 this afternoon, there's going to be some conversation as what the state of Texas looks like. Now multiply that by 50. So
can't imagine.
We're constantly trying to just stay ahead of it as much as we can. Whereas, maybe smaller, more rural states are going to go back to normal quicker than maybe there are districts in Texas that can go back to normal quicker because of their smaller, more rural. They have less of an impact from COVID, whereas say, the Dallas or the Houston areas are much more impacted. So we're just constantly looking for the best numbers and the most information that we can get so we can be best prepared.
Right, and I agree. And it's still, many have not made decisions. Yes, Mike with Buena Vista.
One other thing I just wanted to add that we found, that to me was completely unexpected is that, before COVID even started, we had geared up and we had purchased some new machinery, wrapping machines, things like that, just because we were already in the growth and expansion phase. And, we probably purchased those in, December, but a lot of the machinery comes from overseas, comes from Europe, comes from Germany, things like that. So at the height of the COVID, come to find out, our packaging machines got stuck in customs, and they had been there for, I believe, 3 months, and they just got released. So, I'm afraid even with companies saying, hey, we're going to bring on new machines, things like that, there's still a lot of unknown even getting those. So, luckily we got ours and, 95% of our products are already IW, but that is just something else to consider as, more manufacturers move that way. You may be able to place the PO for a new machine, but getting it through customs was something that we did not foresee and added, 3 months to the timeline on that one.
And I didn't even think about that. Part of the conversation has been what raw materials is a concern of getting those in just to create your products. And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna jump to that question because I want to hear from Dart. you talk about the machinery, or even we talk about plastics and raw materials in bulk. Dart, do you want to address that question? Is there a concern in getting what you need to create the containers, whether it's machinery or just material?
Thanks, Keri. No, the raw materials, we don't see any problems with. We don't foresee any shortages there at all. We are a vertically integrated company, so that does allow us to utilize our own infrastructure to produce products. But we do have, like I mentioned earlier, foam hinge trays has been a huge jump. I mean, all of your takeout and delivery to go restaurants were going to some type of tray to serve curbside or delivery meals. So now when you do have all the school districts also wanting to use potentially some type of tray to put their food in, there's only so much foam hinge tray volume available. So like I said, we're really hoping that we can work together with the schools and look at some alternative packaging. Like for example, this is a 3-compartment tray, just like a foam hinge tray, or we have our box line, something along those lines. One of the things I think was mentioned on the first call, when I listened to it, it was about French fries. And people are like, what can we put our French fries in? Well, we do have what's called a munchie cup. And basically you can just fold it down on this side, fold it down on the top, and now you have a closed container to serve French fries in. So we do have a lot of alternative packaging. It's just so critical we work together with each individual school district food service director to come up with packaging that's going to work for them.
Right. And I know that I'm trying to
additional cost.
Sorry, I was gonna say, I've been, talking with my distributor and pushing, I talk about real-time data. And so many of you mentioned we're focusing on some of the more popular SKUs, the higher volume SKUs and not the others. And I am going to be pushing hard to get some of that information that can be shared with my members, same with what Dart, if you're working on, what are the most valuable products that everyone can really use and more popular. I
do want to mention too that we do have a line of clear package,ing 1 compartment, 3 compartments.
Okay.
They work very well.
Okay, and I'm going to get into specific company stuff here in a minute.
Okay.
As soon as I get through my main questions. So let me redirect us now. And I know some of you have mentioned you've got longer lead times, or maybe your lead times are staying where they are. So in the height of all this and moving into the next school year, has something changed with your lead times? And, let me call on Rick Leach from Bakecrafters. Haven't heard from you a couple minutes. And then once we get through this, I'm going to ask Elizabeth if we have any questions hanging out there, because I've forgotten to do that today. All right, Rick, go ahead.
Okay. Well, with Bakecrafters, of course, 90% of our business throughout the country is school food service. So a number of our items are individually wrapped anyway, with the exception of the hamburger buns, the Pullman breads, the hoagies, English muffins and things like that. But the muffins and the donuts and all of the sandwiches and everything are all IW. And so it's kind of given us an advantage. Initially, when this happened, we got inundated with orders for the thaw and serve sandwiches. So we moved our lead time from 2 weeks to 3 weeks. And we are just now with the 4 sandwich plants getting back to where July 1st, we'll be back to a 2-week lead time on all sandwiches and on all IW products going into the new school year. And of course, because none of us really know, we've looked at the bids and we saw that there are rollovers on most of them, but we don't really think that's what's going to happen when the school goes back. We think the IW is going to be the demand product, and so we've kind of geared accordingly. And like I said, with our core business of 90% being in the school food service, we've geared everything accordingly. We built our inventories conservatively on the bulk products, and stuff, but we have really started building a large inventory on the IW products because we feel that's what's going to happen, and we're in a position to service our schools.
Right. Well, and you are correct. I mean, there is going to be that surge of demand for IW products, but I think that we need to, face the reality that not every school in the nation is going to get that IW product. Manufacturers just could not keep up. Now, Lisa, with Integrated, do you want to address this question about lead times? Because I know you are downsizing your SKUs in the company just to focus on those, the heavier volume. Is that helping keep the lead time at the norm, or has that been changed?
We usually have to ship. We usually have a 21 working day lead time, and so far we've been okay. There might be a few items depending on where we are in production, where orders are, if we have to push any back or not. But so far we've, been able to work with everybody to accommodate most. I mean, there have been some orders or instances that we have had to push back. There's been a lot of last minute orders, especially in the beginning. We did get a lot of last minute, like, we need this, how soon can you get it to us? And there was a few instances where we were able to make that happen for schools, which is nice when you can, when you can step up and you can help out. We're hoping to, we can get some of those lead times narrowed down. That's where, when we do ask for forecasting, that's where a lot of times where forecasting can help, where we can cut down some of those lead times. If we do have like a dedicated forecast that where we can build up inventory, we can try to cut those down. But I honestly don't see that happening in the beginning of the school year, though.
Okay, great. And Joey, with Kellogg's, any changes? I know you guys have been hit hard because of just the natural individually wrapped, packaging with Kellogg's, but how has your lead time been affected, if any at all?
It hasn't been affected at all. Lead times are still normal. It's a 7-day lead time from the distributor to get the food to them. So schools would just submit their orders as usual to distribution.
Okay, great. Does anyone else want to, yes, Mike with Buena Vista.
Just wanted to chime in again. We're Buena Vista is based out of Southern California. And one of the big changes that we had that, benefits the Texas market quite a bit is, we came out with the single-day and 3-day meal kits. But, with the normal production we had in California and the limited freezer space, we weren't able to make everything happen there. So we actually employed our San Antonio, Texas plant, hired an extra 60 workers there. And so all they do is assemble things. That's cut down our lead times. Really saved us on freight because, everyone was paying $5 a case coming out of California. Now we've got a San Antonio product, and, it's also good to be able to support the local economy. So, that was something that really worked to my benefit trying to sell in the Texas market. And so that worked out well for us.
Yeah, no, that's very nice. And I'm sure it probably helped many who had, been furloughed or lost their jobs, sadly. Yes, Rick with Bakecrafters, go ahead.
All right, just thought of something on it. Labatt, of course, is a very strong partner with Bakecrafters. They're carrying 86 line items currently. They buy straight truckloads every week for all of their branches. So anything that anyone wants that they don't have, they can get within a week's time usually on it. So, being a partner with Labatt, as strong as we are and stuff on it, it makes it very easy for the schools. If they're wanting something that they don't currently have within a week, they can have it.
Yes, Labatt's a great company for that. They bring in lots of food on a weekly basis, and that's, the bulk of their business is K through 12. So it makes it easy on us. All right, so I'm gonna move on to the next question. And some of you have already kind of addressed this and some not, but give me a description of your current situation with products on hand versus depleted product or even overstocked product, and how you plan to manage that going into the upcoming school year. I'm going to leave this open to anyone who would like to answer to that question. I think I've called on each of you pretty equally. So yes, Chuck, go ahead. We haven't heard from you in a while.
Well, in terms of product on hand, we're in good shape. I mean, we manufacture all of our disinfectants. All of our ingredients are from here in the United States. I think one of the challenges that a lot of people don't realize in our industry is now there's a greater demand for disinfectants and sanitizer than there's ever been in the history of our country. So For our customers that are ordering hand sanitizer, there's a 10-week lead time for companies that manufacture hand sanitizer. They can't keep up with the demand. I think for those of us on this call that have all talked about the things that we're doing to make sure our customers get their products in a timely fashion, the difficulty is we put all those protocols in place, but we can't get the trucks to the facility to pick the items up and deliver them to our warehouses around the country. So there's a challenge associated with that. And just one other thing I want to mention, it kind of went back to one of your earlier questions. In our case, really the only thing that we have a challenge with or foresee a challenge with would be plastic spray bottles and sprayers. The resins for all those plastic spray bottles come from Asia, and virtually all the sprayers that are used in the United States come from Asia. So now with the increased demand for disinfectants, you have people that are taking spray bottles home from the workplace and using them in their homes. And so we're actually asking our customers, you know, if you got spray bottles in the storeroom, keep them there because they may be hard to come by, you know, a month into the school year.
That is, I'm so glad you shared that. You know, we don't even think about, you know, some of those smaller pieces of equipment that are used on a daily basis. And we've already heard that, you know, there's a concern about the availability of gloves. And so that's a big concern, but don't even think about the spray bottles and things like that. Maybe that explains why my gym does not have those at every station. Employees have taken them home. I'm just kidding.
The hand sanitizers that seem to be everywhere here, the gym, the apartment complex, etc. It's like tequila. It smells like tequila.
Well, that's a local company right here in the Austin area. So interesting little story here. It's a local, I think they do vodka, Tito's, and they started making hand sanitizer. And a school denied receiving just free product because it looked like a bottle of vodka. So, you know, and do not buy any hand sanitizer that was produced in Mexico. I don't know if you guys have seen that now. I'm like, you know, I mean, you don't get sick from the corona, but you get sick from trying to kill the corona. It's a terrible thing.
The one other thing, I'll just mention it as it relates to hand sanitizer. And CDC guidance tells you this, there is no substitute for washing your hands and washing them properly. And hand sanitizer should only be used when you have no access to hand sinks. And one of the reasons I tell you that, I just had a conversation with my nephews over the weekend. I want them all to go to school and be dermatologists, because in 10 years from now, all of the kids and all of us that have been using 80% isopropyl alcohol for our hands are going to have dermatitis related issues.
And that is the scary piece of all this, you know, is that what are the long term, you know, what are we going to see, you know, in the not so distant future with all of this, which is so sad. All right, so I'm going to move on. I think I've already really asked the next couple of questions. I'm going to ask Elizabeth at this point if we have any questions from the audience that you'd like to share. Elizabeth?
No questions. You guys are doing great.
Wow, that is amazing. And I see Jesse Garcia from McLean Marketing has joined us. Hi, Jesse. Good to see you. And you're muted, so if you're going to try to talk, just be aware of that.
Yes, sorry for the late entry.
That's quite all right. All right, so I'm going to now move into some of the more company-specific questions, and several of you submitted some questions for me to ask directly to you. If you did not, and we get through these, and you have something you would like to specifically talk about, I'll give you a few minutes. And I do want to kind of keep the answers at just a few minutes so we can stay on target with our time frame here. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Dan Grout from Tools for Schools. And Dan, so one of your questions submitted was, given the switch to IW, what factors impact the cost increase and what challenges impact manufacturing with wrapping products? I know you touched on this, but hearing it again never hurts.
So I think a lot of us expect to pay more for an individually wrapped product. It's in a bag, so it's obvious that there's a cost factor. But in addition to that, it has to do, and I think this has been touched on by several others, but line time. You know, how quickly the product moves down the line is sort of determining on one of the cost factors. You've got your overhead costs. You know, basic economy or basic economics is, you know, the more you can divide your light bill by, the less you have to apply to the cost of the product to pay for your lights. So imagine if everything's coming down the line at, you know, 10 across and we're making 10 at a time, but then it funnels into one wrapper. So you're wrapping at 1/10 of the speed as you're manufacturing. So you're going to have to slow your line down 90% to be able to not overwhelm the wrapper line. So those are the things that really impact the cost of the product, and probably more so than the cost of the bag. And then you also start getting into the subtleties of wrapping product is, you know, you've added, you know, 1/4 of an inch in wrap with air and everything else in the case. So you've got to account for that in your master case. You don't have as many units in the case, so therefore there's not as many units on the pallet, so that impacts freight. So there's so many variables that go into the cost of the product that really the bag itself is probably the least expensive. I don't know if any of my other panelists want to chime in on that and sort of give their own impression of it, but that's what we're seeing is there's just a lot of other subtleties that go into the true cost of wrapping a product. And
that was a great description, you know, because I think that's the part that many don't understand is how many changes occur just from that one little wrapper, you know.
And, you know, we used to make 1 million units a day, but now we have to slow our line speed down, so we're only making 500,000 units a day. Well, that's where people start getting outed from, because, you know, we want to provide 1 million units, but we can't. We're only providing 500,000, and if, you know, we have to sell 750, only 500 are going out the door. There's 250,000 servings that are not gonna land in the hands of a customer and ultimately in the hands of a student. So.
Correct, and this is why, you know, I talk about schools need to have basically a plan A, B, and C. You know, they need to have that plan A where perfect day, they got all their IW products and they just serve them. You know, that plan B is they got bulk products, but they've got the containers on hand, you know, to assemble and serve. And then plan C is, no, we got bulk products and we have no containers. We're serving in the cafeteria. Are we prepared on the drop of a dime to do that? You know, are we set up for the social distancing and protecting the kids, and what does that look like? So, you know, I think schools, and I hope that my directors, you know, and directors across the U.S. share that with their administration, that it's just not a single answer and a single fix. It is so multifaceted that, you know, schools have to be prepared for daily changes almost, you know, and to do it easily, which that's not easy to think about.
A great point, Keri.
Yeah, but there's another piece to this, you know, as we talk about these IW products, is that there is a higher cost, and most of us, we did not procure the IW products. Okay, we procured the bulk pack products, and that's a whole new bid. And I don't think many realize that. Now, some of us, you know, there are very small flexibilities anymore in adding items to an already awarded bid. And it gets very tricky, and you want to be very careful because districts, especially in the state of Texas, if they're in their reviews, a procurement review, they could have a fiscal finding for not following guidelines. And if they're in a co-op and the co-op doesn't follow the guidelines, it's still on the district's, you know, plate. That's what they are, no pun intended there, but that's who gets the finding, not the co-op. And so many of us are very careful what we do. And I know several of us in the state of Texas, co-op wise, are considering putting out another bid for specifically, you know, IW and bundled, you know, meals, and that's hanging out there. So, all right, Dan, another one of your questions, I'll move on to someone else, is what is the most important information schools can provide to manufacturers as they prepare for reopening?
Real simple answer. What are you going to do next year?
Right, that is the easiest answer.
Yeah. No, and you know, again, it kind of goes back to a statement I made earlier is, and a lot of the panelists have also made, is just projections. I mean, as much information as you can give to the manufacturing community, the better prepared we're going to be able to be to serve your needs. And it's not a matter of just trying to ask the question for a reason to bug you. That information hopefully gets funneled into our systems so that we know what percentage to make of IW, what percentage to make of bulk, so that we have the right product mix, so that we're being responsible to our ownership, and making sure that we have the right product mix to be able to service the customers. And it's just very crucial that as much information as can be conveyed back up the chain towards manufacturing, and not even just, well, I told my distributor. Well, let's have these conversations like we are right now. For me, this panel is probably much more valuable than going to a distributor and talking to them about it, because this is directly from the school district. And hearing you make the statement earlier about having a plan A, B, and C, that's a great idea. I hadn't given that consideration. There's always this is how we're going to go back. Well, for every plan, there better be an exception or two. And that was a great point that you made. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think, on behalf of the food service directors, many of them, they are not the decision makers. They know what they want to do. They have some plans, but it ultimately comes down to what does their administration want them to do. And trust me when I say I've heard some crazy ideas out there that I know are not coming from my food service directors. It's coming from their superintendents or their board of directors who, are not in the trenches, as I so call it, living the food service day to day and knowing what works and what doesn't work. So thank you. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on to Mike with Buena Vista. He did submit a question, and Mike, here's your question. Are your new emergency feeding meal kits going to be available throughout the school year, and do you foresee any supply issues when normal production ramps up?
Sure. Well, we were originally thinking that these meal kits, we've got a breakfast kit, we've got a 1-day, and then we've got a 3-day. We were originally thinking that was going to be summer feeding, and then it was going to be more of a normal school year when we came back. Obviously, that is not the case, and so we are prepared to produce these for the rest of the year because, we believe even if it's the 3-day kit, the kids may be in there Monday through Friday, but if we can get that waiver extended, they're going to want to send the kids home with the 3-day kit, Friday to Sunday, and then they can have them back in on Monday. Same thing with even if kids are coming into the classroom every day, a breakfast kit would be a perfect way just to be able to hand it out, minimize contact that way. And, a lot of these districts just aren't going to have the manpower to do this day in and day out. So it may not be an everyday option, but, once a week, give your employees just a little less work to do by using one of these. So we see these sticking around for the foreseeable future. And then, as I mentioned, we have really hedged our bets and aligned with some distributors as far as getting the ingredients and components for that. And I feel like that's the most important part because, there are a lot of companies out there and, the last one standing with components is normally going to be the benefactor of it. So we want to, everyone to have confidence when they order from us that it's going to show up on time and be exactly what they ordered. So.
Great. And, I don't know how many distributors out there do some assembling of meals, but Labatt, started doing some bundled meals during all of this because they've got the product, they had the containers, and they had the ability, to pull the staff in and create some of those. And I'm sure there are many other distributors out there that are doing that to help the cause. So great. All right. I'm going to move on to Lisa Durkin with Integrated. And Lisa, so one of your questions that you submitted was, what are some challenges of coming out with new products, particularly those that utilize commodities? And this is a hot topic right now because a lot of companies are saying we don't even want to hear the word new products, the words new products. School districts are still kind of asking and even looking into school year 21-22, which I know that's so far out there, but it is being discussed. So, yeah, what are some of the challenges with that, with the new products and thinking around that?
Yeah, making sure that it meets all the nutritional guidelines. Obviously now with COVID, you're probably going to want to have it more as a packaged item as opposed to having a bulk item. When it comes to commodities, you also have to factor in, you have to allow time to get your EPDS approved. Sometimes someone wants something, you can come out with a new product and you're ready to roll with it, but until you get USDA approval to use your commodities, and it used to be that they would only accept EPDS specific times of the year. I believe they've done away with that now, because it used to be only maybe twice a year you could submit. So you may have a new product, but it could be another 6 months before you can get your approval to start commodity processing that.
And that is a great point. I'm glad you brought that up, because I think a lot of those districts that do process are sitting out there thinking, well, I want that burger in an individually wrapped situation, and I'm still going to use my pounds, but that is not a reality, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did not mean to interrupt you there, Lisa. Go ahead. Continue on. I just thought it was such a great point. I had not thought about that aspect of it.
There's lots of little details. I mean, you hope that things could, just flow that easily. We were planning to introduce some new products at National. So in the spring, that's when we, working on all the things. And then when COVID hit, everything gets pushed to the back burner because you've got to focus now on, meeting the needs and the demand for current. And so that's pushed back. So, we are looking at doing some line extensions of things that we make right now and just making a little variant. So it's more of a easy, rather than coming out with a completely new product. It's just a little bit of a tweak. So you're able to come out with something to offer a new product and more ways to utilize commodity pounds effectively. Since there is, at least TDA is allowing schools to carry over their pounds for the entire school year.
Mm-hmm.
So we can hopefully come up with some more solutions.
So I know that integrated includes foil wrappers with one or two of your burger products. And I see that as a great answer to some companies that want to do IW that maybe have to add an extra machine, slow production. Are there any other products? And I know you've got, one of your questions is, as far as commodity products, which ones, do you offer as an IW? But are there some of your other products that you would consider including packaging, an IW package where a school could assemble it themselves, but not have to worry about going to a separate supplier for a package?
We were discussing that last week about like the foil, you were mentioning the foil wrappers, because we have had schools. So we're looking to find out, like, how are we doing with our inventory on that? If we have schools switch from the products that don't have foil to the ones that come with foil, are we going to be able to keep up with that demand? And then we were looking, we have schools that tell us they don't want the foil wrap because they have it custom made and they use their own logo on it. So it's always kind of that double-edged sword, like with packaging. If someone wants a clear wrap, or if they want a graphic wrap to make it look like something they made, or if they want it to think like it came from a store. So there's always a fine line.
Yes, and we did in the last session sort of get into a conversation around that special packaging. It's got your company logo on it. You don't want another product being placed in your packaging. But if you don't include something that is a company, stamped logo, now our schools, just purchasing products and using your packaging for all kinds of things. And I think it's a slippery slope with all that, no doubt. All right, and then I'm going to move on to Joey. You submitted a couple of questions. I'm going to hear from him, and then anyone else that might want to chime in. So I have a little bit of time. All right, so Joey, one of your questions that you submitted is, are there any new programs or tools Kellogg's has available for the upcoming school year?
Yes. And there is. One of them is the Eggo Mini Bites, which consists of mini pancakes, mini waffles, mini French toast. Schools have been asking for thaw and serve directions for a long time, and it's finally come to fruition. So that product can be thawed and served, which is great for your curbside meals. And one pager has been designed for preparation of that product at home or at schools. in addition to thaw and serve, just a one-pager, super simple, many applications. And the second tool that's been developed is all the Eggo products have now, effective July 1, as a part of Cool School Cafe. So you can earn points from the Eggo items and use those points to buy supplies that you need, materials, packaging, equipment, whatever it is you need. In addition to that, there is a triple points effective now through the end of August. So lots to be gained just in Cool School Cafe rewards right now.
Great. Elizabeth, do we have any questions at this time for any of the panelists?
No, no questions.
Wow, okay. So I do have a question for Dart. And, you know, I've heard from other manufacturers about certain containers are more appropriate for an in-classroom setting versus, you know, in the cafeteria or even as a take-home, you know, if they're going to do multiple meals. Would one of you maybe address that question? And I'm hoping that at some point in the next week or two, get maybe some kind of list where it's outlined. Yep, these are the great containers for this setting, and these are better for, you know, cafeteria setting. I'd like to hear from one of you about that.
Sure. Yeah, there are variety. I mean, it basically is going to depend on if you're going to be serving hot, hot and cold. So a lot of people, like I said, have been going toward the foam hinge tray because that's going to insulate, keep things hotter, colder, longer. I mentioned earlier the creative carryout containers we have that also separate the food. One of the biggest trends, though, that we're seeing right now is tamper-evident, tamper-resistant packaging. These just were debuted yesterday. You'll see them on our website today, but they're 6x6 trays. They're tamper-evident, tamper-resistant. They have a tamper alert tab on them. You can get them in from 1 to 4 compartment, but at least it does give you some sense that there is no contamination. Whoever's handling the food with PPE puts it in their packages at bulk and then can take it to the classroom and easily be served there. So we do have that. The other thing I would highly recommend is going to our website, www.dart.biz or dartcontainer.com. Either one will get you there. But you can go through and click on exactly what kind of products do you want. Do you want them to be reheatable? Do you want them to be hinged? Do you want them to be two-piece? And that was a major update we did to our website during COVID-19 because so many people are at home now clicking on Amazon and wanting to see pictures and what does it look like and what size. And so that will hopefully help. The other thing is I highly recommend you work with your distributor salesperson who can also work with our salespeople and develop those customized plans matching your needs with the containers that are available. I mean, I think there's so much variety. I know we've talked about individually wrapped products as well. We have cutlery, we do have cups, but I think cutlery is probably where everybody's leaning. So we, like I said, we run the gamut in substrate. So we have lots of options.
Great. And I have heard that cutlery might be an issue, you know, trying to meet the demand as schools go to everything being, you know, protected. Thank you. Okay, so I have one last question, and this is really for everyone to sort of answer to if you want, and that is, what do you see as your biggest challenge at starting of this upcoming school year, whether it's with, you know, the raw materials, production, meeting the demand, answering to new bids for IW products? I would just love to hear from all of you or some of you on that question. Yes, Chuck.
Oh. So I think the biggest challenge for us is going to be, you know, unlike my peers on the call, we're a service-based company. And so the biggest challenge for us is going to be communication. You know, most of our customers around the country, the ones that have determined what they're going to do, they have an option 1 for going back to school, option 2, option 3. Option 1 is we're going back like normal. The biggest challenge is going to be, okay, if we go back to normal and we're have everybody, we're feeding kids, but then the numbers spike and then we have to shut down and we go to option 2. Or we shut down and we go to option 3, or we close 5 schools in the district that are hot spots. The biggest thing is going to be communicating that to us so that we can adapt our service to it and go back to non-congregate feeding or adapt the service model to meet those particular demands. So I would say communication is going to be the number one tool that's going to help all of us. Is, you know, as soon as something happens in the district, let us know so that we can react to it and help you react to it.
Absolutely agree. Does anybody else have anything they wanted to offer up on this subject matter? I'm sure you all feel very much the same. You know, it's communication is just key during this time. And I'm hoping I can say for the state of Texas, we will hear more today and know of more hard decisions that need to be made at each district level. So it should be interesting to see what comes today. Hopefully some good news or something that helps schools nail down a plan, you know, and allows us to all really move forward as quickly as possible. If any questions, Elizabeth, from any of the attendees?
No, there was one question, but you guys answered it during the presentation. So
okay, wonderful.
Great.
Okay, well, yes, go ahead, Kip with Tasty Brands. You have something?
Yeah, just real quick, I just wanted to go off of what Lisa was talking about, and there's another reason why it's going to be really difficult to have new items, and that's because of the distributors, and you know, we're all manufacturers here, but the distributors may have been hit the worst with all this COVID, and they've got all their shelves just full of food. They don't have space for new products. So if we come up with an awesome new IW idea that everyone's going to love, they better want to buy direct, because unless it's like one really big customer in the co-op that can like guarantee to Labatt in this case that they're gonna order it, then there's no way you're getting it. There's no way they're gonna stock it for you.
No, you are exactly right. And thank you for bringing up that point, because, you know, I know for a fact that not only the BAP, but there are a couple of other distributors that I'm in contact with, and just through task force and so forth. And they have shared, they're not stocking any new products because the volume is typically lower than those tried and true products that everyone's been ordering already. And even with COVID, you know, I got a little more restrictive with what was being requested in the way of newer products to be added to the renewal of my bid with Labatt. They got a little more restrictive of what they were willing to bring in, because it has changed the landscape for everyone. And I think that is nationwide, but it is definitely the new norm for sure. And everyone just has to remain flexible and accepting that, yep, things are going to change probably forever. Some things will come back as our old norms, but we're definitely not going to see it like it was in the past, you know. So, and I think there's some good and some not so fun out of that, but you know, we're all going to move forward and survive. But anyway, well, I just want to say thank you to such a great group of panelists. I so appreciate your time this morning, talking about company-specific things and general topics that are so helpful to the districts out there. And I am sharing the recordings. They're on YouTube. I will share that link to everyone. And I'm also sharing your contact information with the attendees, as well as their contact information with you. So if if an attendee has a direct question for any one of you, they can reach out. But you've also got the list of those that attended today's session. So thank you for being here this morning. I greatly appreciate it. And appreciate this industry and the passion that drives us all forward and gets us through this unprecedented time. So thank you.
Thank you, Keri.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of the week. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
And
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Keri.
Thank you.